why Russia wants to invade Ukraine.
Hey Tom Ping, love what you're doing on your channel, buddy. Super congrats. You know, giving your time and energy to nonprofit business channel. Look, man, keep driving that audience. So Tom Ping, look forward to spending some time with you. I know you got the right mindset, so I'd love for you to share some of that from the big V. God bless, be great. 10X.
So why Russia wants to invade Ukraine? There are two reasons. One is ideological, the other is sphere of influence. If you look at Vladimir Putin, who's the president of Russia, he released an article back in July 2021. The article is called Article by Vladimir Putin on the Historical Unity of Russians and Ukrainians. Basically, this very long article talks about Russians and Ukrainians are basically one people. I am not going to agree or disagree, argue about that, but there is some truth to it because they're both Slavic people, and the whole country of Russia was born from Ukraine in the city of Kiev. There's a lot of Russians in Ukraine, and that is sort of the motherland of Russians. But there are definitely cultural and language differences between Russians and Ukrainians. So from Vladimir's point of view, they are the same people. They're like older brother and younger brother. The Russians are older brother, the Ukrainians are younger brother. So they see that themselves as the same family. That's reason number one, they're the same family. And reason number two is sphere of influence. In the last century, Russia was part of the Soviet Union. All of those countries like Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, all those countries are part of the Russian bloc. It's called the Eastern Bloc. They're part of the Russian sphere of influence. Like Russia is the big brother, everybody has to listen to Russia. But since the breakup of Soviet Union, that's no longer true because a lot of those countries have decided to side with the West. They want to be more like America. They want to be more like Western Europe. So they're not following Russia anymore. So in the case of Latvia, Lithuania, Albania, many of those countries, they join European Union and they become part of NATO. We'll talk more about NATO, which is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And Russia sees this as a betrayal. Russia sees this as losing their sphere of influence. They are losing their friends. They're like, you don't want to be my friends anymore. Okay, they're losing many, many friends, and Russia does not like that. Putin does not like that. And many of their friends next door to Russia are becoming the friends of the West. So now Putin's really pissed off. And Ukrainian is the last straw. You cannot be their friends. You're my little brother, you cannot be their friends. You gotta listen to what I say, which is what Vladimir Putin believes. So two reasons. One is ideological, that Putin believes they're the same people, and two is that Russia does not like to lose its sphere of influence. Russia wants to influence all its neighbors. They do not like the idea of the United States, Europe, Western Europe, taking away their friends. NATO. What is NATO? NATO is the North Atlantic Treaties Organization. And the organization was formed after World War II for the reason to balance Russia, to balance Soviet Union, because Soviet Union was growing. It's becoming a threat. It has nuclear weapons. So the West, America and the Western Europe, they formed this organization called NATO to counter Soviet Union. So they want to build a military force to make sure that the Russia does not pose a threat to the West. So that's what NATO was created for. Today, Like we said earlier, many of the Eastern Bloc countries like Latvia, like Lithuania, they become part of NATO. And Russia does not like that. But inside NATO, not everybody thinks the same. Let me give you an example. The United States and the United Kingdom, they're very, very tough on Russia. So if you watch the news recently, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, saying on TV that, oh, Russia is going to invade. Russia is going to invade Ukraine, right? But you also see that the French president, German chancellor, they went to see Putin to try to negotiate peace, try to resolve the situation through negotiation. Very different way. So Joe Biden in the US is saying, no, they're gonna invade. And France and Germany is trying to make diplomacy work. So why is that? Because there's actually two different views inside NATO. One is a very strong point of view like the US, and the other is trying to resolve this through diplomacy. And the reason why Joe Biden is saying they're gonna invade is trying to get NATO all aligned. He's trying to convince all of the NATO members to listen to the US and do what the US says. But there are countries like France and Germany, they are trying to give diplomacy a chance. And there's a reason why they're doing that. Because Western Europe relies a lot on Russian energy, oil and gas. There's a pipeline being built between Russia and Germany. It's called Nord Stream 2. And this is a very, very important pipeline because this is a gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. And Germany is relying heavily on this pipeline because their future energy plan is rely on this pipeline. Russia is going to supply all of the gas to power German industries. So you think about Mercedes, Volkswagen, all of those industries in Germany is going to rely on energies from Russia. And this is very important to their economic growth. So Germany doesn't want to piss off Russia because that is really their only source of energy in the next probably 50 years. That's why there are some countries like Germany, they don't want to piss off Russia. They want to try to solve this problem through talks, through negotiation. So that's why you see the heads of these countries, they actually go visit Russia and say, hey, can we work this problem out? Right? Can we solve this problem just by talking? Let's not go to war, okay? Is it working? We don't know. But it remains to be seen if that is working. Crimea. Is there a historical precedent for Russia to invade Ukraine? The answer is yes. Back in 2014, Russia actually invaded Ukraine. They took away a portion of the country called Crimea. It's in the southern part of Ukraine. The Russian military went in, basically occupied Crimea and took control over Crimea. And now Crimea is under Russian control. But internationally, nobody recognized that happened. No country recognized Crimea as part of Russia, but in reality, Crimea is part of Russia now. They're under Russian control. And why did that happen? Because in Ukraine, there's a lot of Russian people and people that speak Russian, particularly in the Crimea region and also in the east. So think of Ukraine as this country here. So on the eastern side, most people there speak Russian and they are Russians. Then there are people that actually want to unify with Russia. There are people that actually want to be part of Russia. And in fact, they have Russian rebels. There are militias inside Russia that are pro-Russian. They want to be part of Russia, and they're fighting the Ukrainians. They're rebels. They're not official military. They're rebels. They're like civilians that fight the government because they want to be part of Russia. So that exists on the east side of Ukraine as well. Historically, there's a precedent where Russia came in, invaded Ukraine, and took parts of its land. So how did international community respond to that? Of course, the international community did not like that. They gave Russia a lot of sanctions, very difficult sanctions, but it did not change the outcome. Crimea is still being controlled by Russia today. So we may see the same thing happening again with Russians coming in and take the eastern part of Ukraine, which is called Donbass. So they want to take this region called Donbass away from Ukraine because most of the people that live in that region are Russians. Russia-China relations. Earlier, we talked about Western Europe depend a lot on Russian energy. However, if there is a war, and it's very likely that the Western world, US plus Western Europe, will impose strong sanctions, punishment against Russia, which means that they will not buy any more energy from Russia. This will be very bad for the Russian economy. So what is Russia going to do? About 2 weeks ago, Vladimir Putin went to China. So China had their Winter Olympics, they had their opening ceremony, and Vladimir Putin went to China to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping. And the two of them are, like buddy-buddy. The real reason why Vladimir Putin was so desperate to see Xi Jinping was that he wants to secure a way to sell Russian energy. If the West is not going to buy Russian energy, then he wants to sell that energy to China. And that was the real purpose why he was in China meeting Xi Jinping. He was only there for 1 day and he left very quickly because he has a war to fight. And after that, notice that the senior leadership in China, they went completely quiet. You don't hear them, you don't see them for a week. There's a reason for it, because the senior leadership in China, they're arguing with each other. Should we support Russia and further alienate, make United States more angry? Or should we not stand with Russia and hopefully that will improve the US-China relationships? So there's two groups of people inside the senior leadership in China arguing about this for a week. What they're gonna do, we still don't know. But I suspect that China's point of view is this. The US and China are fighting already, right? The US is not friendly to China already. So why not just befriend Russia, right? At least we'll find Russia as an ally. And this is very interesting because Russia and China are not natural friends. They are only friends of opportunity. They're only friends when they have something to benefit from each other. And when there's nothing to benefit each other, they're enemies. They're called frenemies. They're sometimes enemies, sometimes friends. But when you look at the West, when you look at countries like US, Canada, UK, Australia, they don't have this problem because they share the same value. They even share the same language. In fact, their systems of government, this culture is so similar, you can take an Australian and put him in Canada, in Vancouver, and it'll be like no change. He can understand everything in the new country because the system, the rule of law, the culture is almost the same. So this is shared by 4 countries, US, Canada, UK, and Australia. So they're always forever friends. They don't depend on some kind of benefit. Like if I give you money, then you be my friend. It's not like that. So because they share common values. So this is also very interesting, right? Like people that share the same value with you, that's a lifetime friendship, right? People that you only want some kind of benefit from, they're short-term friendship. And that's exactly what it is. China and Russia is short-term friendship, whereas the West, they're long-term friendships because they share common values. This is such an important lesson here. And we talk about countries like we talk about people, maybe even little children, but that's exactly how it is. International diplomacy, international politics is basically like a bunch of children fighting over toys. Russia, Europe. What is the Russian relationship with Western Europe, like I said earlier, it's not the same with different members of NATO, with different members of the European Union. With UK sides with the US. Germany sides more with Russia because Germany needs Russian energy to develop its economy, to develop its industry. So not every country in NATO, in European Union, think the same way about the Russian possible invasion of Ukraine. Vladimir is going to take advantage of that, right? He's going to try to split NATO. He's going to try to split Western point of view. He knows that Germany and many parts of Europe needs Russian energy. And he knows that now is the time because it's still winter in Europe. People need a lot of energy. If Russia cut the energy, a lot of people are going to suffer. He needs to make his move now, not in the summer when most of Western Europe do not need as much energy. And also, because it's in the middle of winter, if Putin wants to invade Ukraine, now's the time. Because the land is frozen over. It's easy for tanks and people to move into Ukraine. But when it's summer, a lot of the land around Ukraine is very swampy, meaning that it's muddy. It's hard for tanks to travel to invade Ukraine during the summer. So Putin also has a very tight schedule, right? So if he wants to invade Ukraine, now's the time. He does not have a few months to wait. He has to do it now, or it's going to be much harder later. Prediction: will there be a war? I think Vladimir Putin is a very calculating man. He's ex-KGB and later became president of Russia, and he's an Ironman. He has control of Russia over the last 20 years. And he has actually successfully invaded Crimea back in 2014. And not only that, there's other countries that he has invaded. Will this happen? This is my prediction, all right? I believe Vladimir Putin is trying to get the maximum benefits out of the West. So before, the West always say bad things about Russia and Vladimir Putin. They always sanction Russia and they don't want to associate with Russia. But now you got prime ministers and presidents visiting Putin, and the whole world is talking about him. He's getting attention. Russia's getting attention. He likes that. And he's going to try to use this to get as much benefits from the West as possible. Maybe lifting sanctions. Maybe have the West agree that they will not allow more Eastern Bloc countries to join NATO or Europe, and thereby increasing his sphere of influence. I think that's what he wants to achieve ultimately. He wants to put a bunch of military around Ukraine, exert pressure on Ukraine to not become part of the West, exert pressure on the West not to make friends with Eastern Bloc countries, and thereby increasing his control over Eastern Europe. He's gonna try to do that until he succeeds. But if he doesn't get what he wants, what will he do? And my prediction is that he will invade. He will invade Ukraine because he's a strong man. If he backs down, then no one in the world will believe him anymore. No one will see him as a threat. In order to let the world know that Russia means business, he has to invade. If he does not get what he wants, he will invade Ukraine. And he's not going to take over the entire country. He just wants the part where the most Russian people are. He just wants the eastern part of Ukraine. And it'll be Crimea all over again. He's going to come in, he's going to take over the eastern part of Ukraine, and he's going to do it with a reason. He's not going to just walk in and take over the country because that's bad. That looks bad. He's going to encourage the rebels, the militias inside Ukraine to fight the Ukrainians and create problems so that Russia has a reason to come in and take over the eastern part of Ukraine. They're shelling, they're like throwing more bombs, right? So there's a lot of actually military conflict inside Ukraine because of that. And the Ukrainian military actually tried to refrain from attacking the rebels because they know this is the plan. If the Ukrainian army attacks the rebels, then Russia will have a reason to come in and take over the eastern part of Ukraine. And if they want to do it, I totally believe that Russia can take it over in a very short period of time. It should be very easily done for Russia. Russia is just waiting for the right time, the right reason to go in and take over. And when the international communities, sanction Russia, they still have China as a friend to help them out with buying their energy. And that is my prediction. And let's see if that's how the situation unfolds. I don't want war, but if war does happen, then expect higher energy prices, pay more for gas, pay more for electricity around the world. And that's just the way it is. So that is my prediction. Take some fucking action and don't be a fucktard.